The creepy gym teacher. What if I told you that a school teacher was secretly creating videos for the dark web, and the victims were his own students? This story comes from Reddit. To protect identities, we'll call the teacher Mr. Hawk. Mr. Hawk seemed harmless, mid-50s, friendly smile. Teachers trusted him. Parents admired him. Then one day, he introduced something new: yoga classes for 6th graders. He talked about focus and flexibility. The school agreed. That's when things started feeling wrong. During class, Mr. Hawk ignored the boys completely. All his attention stayed on the girls. Correcting poses, standing too close. His favorite pose? Downward dog. If you know the pose, you already understand why this was disturbing. A few weeks later, he convinced the school to let girls wear skirts in gym class. The boys stayed in shorts. Then came the beach trip, swimming lessons. Students noticed Mr. Hawk constantly entering and leaving the changing rooms, over and over again. Still, no one questioned him. His reputation was spotless. Until 2016, police discovered he had been secretly recording students using a pen disguised as a camera, changing rooms, yoga sessions. The videos weren't for personal use. They were being sold on the dark web. For money, Mr. Hawk was arrested. And suddenly, every uncomfortable moment finally made sense. The dream that knew too much. Some stories are disturbing because they don't make sense, and this is one of them. This Reddit user shared an experience that still has no logical explanation. A dream that didn't just feel real, it came true. To protect her identity, we'll call her Julia. When Julia was 16, she went to sleep like any other night. Nothing felt unusual until the dream began. She found herself awake in her own bedroom. The door slowly opened. A tall, pitch-black figure stood in the doorway. No face, no eyes. Just a solid, shadowy shape. Then it spoke. It said only one sentence. "Your father will die when you're 22. And then, nothing." Julia jolted awake, gasping for air. The dream felt different from any nightmare she'd ever had. It didn't fade. It stayed with her. The next morning, she told her family everything. The figure, the words, the exact age. Her father tried to calm her down. He told her not to worry. He even said that now that she had spoken the dream out loud, there was no way it could come true. He promised to be extra careful. But some things can't be avoided. Years passed, and then Julia turned 22. That same year, her father died in a tragic accident, exactly as the dream had warned. Julia never shared the details of how it happened. But she did share one thing: their final conversation. 3 hours before he passed away, their last words to each other were, "I love you." Some people say it was coincidence. Others believe the mind can predict the future. But Julia never forgot that shadow in the doorway. I'm not alone. Shocking twist. This Reddit story is about a woman who thought she was completely alone in her home. We'll call her Marianne. Marianne lived a quiet, predictable life. She lived by herself and she always felt safe. Until her house started acting wrong. At first it was easy to ignore. Groceries seemed to run out faster than usual. She told herself she was probably eating more than she realized. Or maybe she was just being forgetful. But it didn't stop. Food kept disappearing from her fridge. Then something even stranger happened. Dirty dishes began showing up in the dishwasher. Dishes Marianne was certain she had never used. Before she could make sense of that, another detail pushed her over the edge. Wet towels started appearing in her laundry hamper, on days she hadn't showered, on days she hadn't even touched the bathroom. By now, Marianne was genuinely scared. She lived alone. None of this should have been possible. Then came the noise. Late at night, she began hearing heavy thumping sounds coming from the attic. Not scratching, not light movement, actual footsteps. She tried to rationalize it. The wind, an animal, old boxes shifting. But deep down, she knew. Someone might be up there. Ignoring it was no longer an option. One day, she grabbed a flashlight, took a deep breath, and climbed into the attic. The moment she stepped inside, the truth hit her. Someone had been living there. There was a sleeping bag, a pillow, a small radio, a hot plate, and piles of food wrappers scattered around. Whoever it was, wasn't there at the moment. Marianne called the police immediately. She told them everything. The missing food, the dishes, the wet towels, and now the attic setup. The police believed her. They suspected the person wasn't using the front door, but entering through an attic window from outside, so they waited. That same day, they saw a man climbing a tree, trying to get back into the attic window. He didn't make it. The police caught him before he could escape. During questioning, the man admitted everything. This had been his routine. Every day, he waited until Marianne left for work. Then he came down from the attic, ate her food, used the house, and cleaned up just enough to go unnoticed. When she returned, he either slipped out quietly or hid back upstairs. It had worked perfectly, until it didn't. The mystery was solved, but the story didn't end there. When Marianne saw him in person, she felt something unexpected. Compassion. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't violent. He was homeless and desperate. Instead of pressing charges, Marianne made a decision most people never would. She helped him. She let him stay, helped him find a job, and allowed him to live in the attic until he could stand on his own. What started as a terrifying discovery ended as an act of rare kindness. The scream outside my window. Around 2022, a question started trending on Reddit. Night owls. What's the creepiest thing you've ever heard at night? Thousands of people replied, but one story stood out. We'll call the person who shared it Ryan. One night, Ryan was home alone with his dog. The house was quiet. He got into bed and started drifting off to sleep. That's when he heard it, a scream. It was faint and far away, almost easy to ignore. Ryan told himself it was probably kids messing around outside. The neighborhood was full of them. 10 minutes passed. The scream came again. This time, it was louder. Another 10 minutes went by, and then it happened again. Closer. Ryan's dog lifted its head and started growling toward the sound. All the doors were locked, but suddenly Ryan didn't feel safe anymore. Something was wrong. When the screaming returned, it was unbearable. So loud it sounded like it was coming from right outside his bedroom window. His dog went crazy, barking and scratching at the glass. Ryan froze. Terrified, he pulled the blanket over his head and waited for it to stop. Eventually, the noise faded. Gathering every ounce of courage he had, Ryan looked out the window. There was no one there. The yard was completely empty. Silent. But the quiet didn't last. Moments later, several police cars rushed into the neighborhood. Officers jumped out, sweeping the area with flashlights. This wasn't a routine patrol. Something serious had happened. The presence of police made Ryan feel slightly safer, but he couldn't relax. He needed answers. The next day, Ryan asked his neighbors what had happened. What he learned made his blood run cold. A mentally unstable patient had escaped from a nearby psychiatric facility. The patient had been running through the neighborhood, screaming at the top of their lungs. And worse, they were armed with a knife. Then came the detail that truly terrified Ryan. The reason the screams sounded like they were outside his window was because the escaped patient had run past his bedroom and then crawled underneath the steps of his front porch, still holding the knife. If Ryan had stepped outside to investigate the noise, he would have come face to face with them. Thankfully, the police arrived in time and captured the patient before anyone was hurt. But Ryan still thinks about it, how close he came to danger, and how one decision, staying in bed instead of checking the noise, may have saved his life. The worst date ever. This story happened in the 1990s, but the man who lived through it stayed silent for decades, until October 2020. That's when a post went viral on a True Scary Stories subreddit. The title was only 7 words. I went to a serial killer's lair. We'll call the man Joe. Before dating apps existed, Joe used public chat rooms to meet people. That's where he started talking to someone called Slim Guy 65. Their conversations were public, friendly, and normal. Slim Guy 65 seemed funny, polite, and intelligent. Joe felt comfortable with him. Then one day, Joe received an email from a stranger. It was a warning. The sender claimed their friend had met Slim Guy 65 in real life and had been badly hurt. They said the police were contacted, but nothing was done. The message ended simply, "Be careful, don't meet him," Joe replied, asking for details. No response ever came. Weeks later, Slim Guy 65 messaged Joe again and suggested meeting in person. The warning stayed in Joe's mind, but curiosity won. It was daytime. What could really go wrong? Slim Guy 65 invited Joe to his home. When Joe arrived, he was greeted by a thin, soft-spoken man in his 40s. He didn't look threatening. But the moment Joe stepped inside, something felt wrong. The apartment was almost completely empty. No furniture, no personal items. The floors were spotless, like no one actually lived there. Slim Guy 65 explained it wasn't really his place. He was just watching it for someone else. Then he locked the door. Not a normal lock, a deadbolt. Joe stayed calm and asked why. Slim Guy 65 said he didn't want anyone interrupting them. Joe insisted the door be unlocked and made him leave the keys on the counter where he could see them. Slim Guy 65 offered a tour. It only got worse. There was no dining table, just a long metal table like something from a morgue. Slim Guy 65 claimed the apartment used to be a doctor's office. The rooms were dark, windows covered, and nearly every door had its own deadbolt. By the time they reached the bedroom, Joe had had enough. He asked one question: "What exactly do you want to do here?" Slim Guy 65 panicked. His words came out rushed and confused. Joe didn't wait. He turned around and walked out. As he drove away, one thought wouldn't leave his mind. Was that man a killer? Joe considered going to the police. But what could he report? A creepy apartment and a bad feeling? So he stayed quiet. Years later, in the early 2000s, Joe saw a news report that made his blood run cold. Several men from his area had gone missing. One was later found murdered. All of them had been looking to meet other men, just like Joe. To this day, he wonders if they accepted the same invitation, if they walked into the same empty apartment. Joe will never know the truth, but the questions have never stopped haunting him.